everyone. Thanks for joining this episode of DT On Call. I'm Viji Davis, your host, and today we have Jenn Lickteig, CEO of TBS Factoring, with us. Welcome, Jenn. We're really excited to have you join us and are looking forward to chatting with you today. So thanks again.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Really looking forward to the conversation.
It's great. Jenn, so I guess for everyone, can you tell us a little bit about TBS Factoring, what it is you do, what's the company about, what are you focused on?
Sure, yes. So TBS Factoring has been around since 1968, and put it plainly, we factor receivables for small businesses. So what that means is when a company provides a service, they would generate an invoice to their client, and then normally, like the rest of businesses in America, you submit your invoice and you wait to get paid, and that can be quickly on your terms, or sometimes it can be much later. And so what our company does is we purchase that invoice on the same day that it's issued, and we pay the client the same day, and then we wait to get paid. And that's called factoring, and we've been doing that for a long time.
What are the key goals of your business? And how do you make sure that you get paid?
Sure. Well, the number one goal is to support the cash flow of our clients. Okay. And so whether it's a truck driver who's delivering a load, or it's somebody providing a professional service, it could be even a landscaper who's busy outside of a building. It could be any number of things, selling a product or a service. It's to improve their cash flow so that they're not having to take out expensive credit lines and or other financing means to keep their cash flow going. So one of the things that we do is improve that so that they have use of that money to do more business with, rather than waiting 30, 60, 90 days to get paid. The other thing that we do is we take the risk. So if they never get paid, we are the ones that don't get paid, not the client, and that's part of the agreement. And for us to make sure that we get paid, we do a lot of things. And most of it is building relationships with the debtors, the clients that owe the money.
With the current pandemic going on, how has that impacted your outlook on how you're managing the business? And what are some things that you think about?
Well, I think for us, we're in the risk business anyway, and we're in the finance business. So we are generally a good resource when a small business needs cash flow and they can't get a credit line. And so now that's happening more and more as our banks are being careful about who they lend money to, knowing that there could be defaults and there could be business closures as a result of impacts by COVID-19. It actually drives more business to us. And our process is the same as it always has been, which is manage every dollar out the door like it's your own and take the risks that you feel are necessary.
Some of, the brands that are working through this pandemic right now are thinking about how do we make sure people still are working with us, and how do we make sure that we're found when they're looking for us?
Yes, it's a great question. And, to that, I would say no matter what your business is, what else can they do, even from home, to support their clients' needs? And it could be a phone call to say, hey, is there anything that I can be working on for you from my home? Are there any other ways we can go about having a working relationship with each other? For a more traditional business that's providing a product or service, it comes down to understanding what the new needs are of the client. For me, it comes down to understanding what the opportunities are as a result of this situation, and how can your company accommodate those new opportunities that clients might be presenting you with.
How do you decide if an opportunity is more of a short-term opportunity versus a long-term reality and a new norm? How do you decide to mobilize the various departments in your company to address these?
It's a really good question, especially...
You're making me feel good here, Jenn.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Honestly, if I have the answer for this right now, then we've won the business lottery. I'm coining this phrase recently. I'm calling it TNN, the new normal.
Yeah.
And, it reminds me of a story from my own career a long time ago when I used to have a construction company, and it was really small for, at the time I was doing general construction, and my annual revenue was less than $5 million. If I had won a painting contract for $6 million, I would have been a painting contractor from that point forward. Sometimes those new things that we do end up being the thing that we continue to do if we're good at it. So my answer would be open to exploring what your new normal is. And I wouldn't necessarily tie it down to this is temporary, because if you're good at it and you can make money at it and you enjoy it, why not keep doing it?
It's very good advice. The comparisons that are being made right now with COVID-19 and the pandemic and the impact to our economy, the closest thing that comes to it is the 2008 crash. What are some of the things that you can share in terms of consistent ways of working that you had gone through back then compared to new things that you're trying today?
Sure. Well, the word that comes to mind is pivot. And when your business has the ability to pivot, which means to potentially change at a moment's notice into something else to fill a need, that's a very desirable quality right now. That's a survival skill. And the only way that you can do that is to be open. Sometimes big events force innovation. And the reason that you find innovation in big moments is there may be scarcity of resources, or a problem is being presented that you've never solved before, which requires you to be a little creative with a solution. I think companies that are going to survive this are going to be the ones that think carefully about what could they do with their resources or their people or their technical capability that they've never done before that somebody needs. It's connecting that, it's pivoting.
Yep. Have there been any changes or pivots that have bubbled to the top that you've implemented at TBS Factoring that you want to share?
Yes, absolutely. So way before it was a thing or required, I have a lot of friends that are in Europe, especially in Italy, and they were all connecting and saying, listen, this thing is coming to you. You're not going to be able to stop it. And we know, Jen, that you're running a business. You need to be ready for how to handle this situation with your employees. So in late February, we were already working on a stay-at-home process before the United States ever had its, first cases. And consequently, on March 9th, which was 2 weeks before the first stay-at-home orders were issued, we started to implement our work-from-home process. And we were able, and it's kind of a funny thing, but I say we have 197 satellite offices. We were able to, out of our 222 employees, we were able to move 197 to a complete work from home scenario in about 3 days.
That's amazing.
Doing that ahead of time allowed us to work through the natural things that you would expect to happen where, I'm in Oklahoma and not everyone has great internet access. There are rural communities still here. And just solving that problem required us to rethink what we could do with a person if they couldn't connect to the internet. And so we put them on phones and making phone calls to clients. And we had one employee that we couldn't figure out what to do with. And that employee, all they did was call clients and just say, thank you for your business.
That's great.
So one thing I'm figuring out what can you do with your people or your technical competencies or your business that is needed.
With that, you had mentioned that, you have a lot of small business owners that are your clients. And you said a lot of them are truck drivers. You have this really great initiative, Sandwiches for Semis, which is pretty interesting. Can you please tell us a little bit about that?
I would love to. And I have to say, it feels a little bit awkward because I get to talk about it, but it wasn't my idea. It was the idea of one of our marketing associates. Her name was Alyssa Brackett. And she had that mindset that I wish all of our employees had at the time, which was, hey, what could we do that helps our clients out? What do they need? And what they needed was actually a meal. A lot of truck drivers were impacted by the serious up-ramp in volume, but at the same time, rest stops were closing, truck stops were closing, restaurants are closed, and you can't drive a power unit through the drive-through at McDonald's. So they were actually having a hard time finding a meal. And it didn't require them to park in a parking lot half a mile away and walk to a fast food location. And then even when they got there, they wouldn't be allowed to walk through the drive-through line because they weren't in a vehicle. So Alyssa came up with the idea that we should provide sandwiches off the highway. And that's what we did. We went out there on a Friday and we gathered up 600 sandwiches and we put signs up, and I'll tell you what, it was a blast. It kind of snowballed and took off in some other areas, which was neat to see. And my favorite part of it was just the old fashioned, when you were a kid, maybe not when you were a kid, when I was a kid, we used to do this thing where you crank your fist and then the truck driver would pull the horn.
When I was a kid too, riding in the Volkswagen,
yeah,
facing outward, and seatbelts were optional. So yes.
And so we were hearing that on the highway. Even the truckers that couldn't pull over to get a sandwich, they were giving us the horn salute. So it was really nice. It was great to see that.
That's great. So what are some of the things that you do besides having a bike track in your office to make sure employees feel like they are number one? Yeah.
Now, if you haven't done a 360 on a big wheel in the office, you're missing out. Okay.
We have scooters.
Scooters. We have scooters too. And I can tell you can shred on a scooter just the same as a big wheel. So we have a really neat work culture here. We've worked really hard to have a good time. And I'll tell you the way someone put it to me, I had a reporter come into the building and they were saying that our office reminded them of Google, which is a huge compliment because I think we're in the Silicon Desert out here in the middle of, or the Silicon Prairie, I should call it, out in the middle of the United States. So nothing high tech to speak of, except for maybe us here. But he said, being in your office kind of reminded me of like the best year I had in high school, where I felt like I was clicking on all cylinders. I was hanging out with people I liked. I was looking forward to coming to work every day or coming to school every day. And the building is sort of set up like that. We have murals everywhere. We have lots of interactive things that speak to our culture. We have a culture wall, an entire wall. It's a huge long wall that changes out every month with a theme. And just before we all left the office, the theme was show us your pets at home, your new coworkers. And it's full of everyone's cats and dogs and mice and rabbits and snakes and, whatnot.
Yep.
It's things like that where we're interacting with our team through different mediums and understanding that everyone has a different style of communication. And we have a responsibility if we're trying to socialize a message to reach all of those different ways in which people want to communicate.
It was such a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks so much for being here.